This is part 4 of The Spirit Walker, Tessa Lamar novels, Book 4. Written by Kathryn M. Hearst. Narrated by Holly Adams. Be sure to subscribe to Kathryn's channel where you can find more of Kathryn's paranormal and contemporary romance novels.
Chapter 29. I entered the dining room with TJ clinging to my leg. Carrying a 10-pound baby in my womb was hard, but dragging a 6-year-old along for the ride about killed me. My husband stood, but I couldn't tell if they'd picked up on my exhaustion or were starving.
"Let's get you cleaned up for supper. Grandma made your favorite."
Aaron extracted TJ from my side and led him into the bathroom. Bryson pulled my chair out.
"How'd it go?"
"Good." I sat and glanced over the food. For the first time since my morning sickness had ended, I wasn't hungry. The mere thought of chowing down on corn chips smothered in spicy chili made my stomach revolt.
"Do you need some help dipping your food?"
Grandma motioned to the enormous casserole dish. "No, it's not that." I pressed my fist against my sternum and winced. "I have heartburn. I think I'll stick to biscuits for now." Bryson squeezed my knee under the table.
"It's been a long day. Do you need to lie down?"
I turned to him with every intention of telling him yes, but I changed my mind. We'd all been through so much in the previous few days. A little family time would do us some good. Besides, once Quinn was born, the real chaos would begin. "No, I'm fine." Aaron and TJ took their seats. After a quick prayer to bless the food, the women at the table shot into action. Dottie grabbed the spoon and served everyone, except me, a hearty helping of the casserole. Grandma passed the biscuits and butter. Even Darlene got in on the action by filling glasses with sweet tea.
"Thanks, ladies."
Aaron reached for his silverware. "Here, Daddy, let me help you." Jolene set his napkin on his lap. I snickered before I could stop myself. I'd spent the night in the hospital hooked up to monitors, and no one seemed to care. He was a man with his arm in a sling and bandages peeking out from beneath his shirt. Of course they'd think he couldn't lift a spoon. As if he'd read my mind, Bryson tightened his grip on my knee. I shoved half the biscuit into my mouth and smiled.
"Tessa Marie, make sure you get your thank you cards for the shower gifts to be sent out before the baby's born."
Grandma helped herself to the broccoli. "I'll write them once I get a chance to open the presents." She moved her dentures around. Never a good sign.
"If they're going to induce you next week, we need to get to work on the nursery."
Aaron spoke between forkfuls. All eyes turned to me. I wanted to kick him. Hard. Darlene gasped. "Don't let them give you Pitocin. My God, it makes the contractions come on right away, and it makes them stronger." I didn't like the sound of that. "Why not let things progress naturally?" Dottie glanced between me and Aaron. "The baby's getting too big to fit through my pelvis." I snatched a second biscuit from the basket. Grandma grinned.
"That must be one huge baby."
I knew she'd meant it as a joke. My great-grandmother would never say something to hurt me. But when everyone laughed, I wanted to cry. Harris, who'd remained quiet throughout dinner, turned to me.
"Is it safe to deliver the child early?"
"I suppose so. I mean, the doctor suggested it." It wasn't entirely true. He'd advocated for a C-section, but I did not want to get into that at the dinner table, or ever.
"How do you feel about this?"
Interestingly enough, the root doctor spoke to Aaron as opposed to Bryson or both of them. Forecovering between his plate and his mouth, Aaron shrugged.
"I trust Tessa and the doctor to make the right decision."
Bryson sat so still, I'd doubted he'd taken a breath since the conversation had turned. My cell rang, which was a blessing and a curse. It gave me an excuse to get up from the table, but Grandma had a strict no phones during dinner policy, so much so she demanded everyone leave their phones on the sideboard. She narrowed her eyes as if daring me to move. Sorry, it could be work. I pushed my chair back.
Aaron's allowed to take calls because he's a homicide detective. You, young lady, are not.
My great-grandmother raised her chin.
I'm on medical leave for the next 6 to 8 weeks, but she's the victim's advocate on call.
Aaron sighed as if admitting I had a job and he didn't had cost him something. They could debate if my professional status warranted bending the rules without me. I plucked my now silent phone from the sideboard and walked into the living room. I didn't recognize the number, but it was local. I hit redial. A woman's voice came over the line. Hello? Hi, this is Tessa Lamar. I just missed... This is Emily. We spoke at the Campo death scene. I'm a tech... Her rapid speech made me wonder if she was nervous or if something else had happened. I remember you. How can I help? This is confidential? She paused. I don't want anything I'm about to say to end up in my personnel record. With an opening like that, my concern for her grew. Yes. Besides the fact I'm bound to confidentiality, I don't work in internal affairs. Great. So, how does this work? Should we Skype or do I launch into it now? If it's okay with you, I'd rather talk face to face. Are you free tonight? My lower back ached and my stomach churned. I wanted nothing more than to sit in Charlie's easy chair and finish the romance movie I'd started Sunday. Sure. Where would you like to meet? I live in College Park. I'll text you my address. Emily sighed. Thanks, Tessa. I haven't slept well since the Campo investigation. Every time I close my eyes, I see his body. I understand, and you're welcome. I'll text you when I'm on my way. While waiting to make sure she sent the address, I scrolled through my email. Most of the messages were spam, but one made me smile. Micah Sterling had forwarded the selfie he'd taken with me. If this didn't buy me some brownie points with Jolene, nothing would. I forwarded Emily's address to my GPS app and hurried back into the dining room. Hey, Jojo, could you take a look at this for me? The girl hadn't said a word to me since I'd walked into the house, but she'd made her anger known through a series of huffs and puffs and eye rolls. True to form, she frowned and held out her hand. I gave her the phone. What's that on the screen? Her eyes widened along with her grin. Micah Sterling took a selfie with you? No way! Way? I laughed. I met him the other day. Her mouth fell open. He's a very private person. He never lets people take pictures with him. How did you get this? I told him how much you loved his show. Her reaction brightened my entire day. I'd gone from the sewers of teen angst to the clouds in the blink of an eye. I have an autograph for you, too. The Micah Sterling? From Vampires Suck? Darlene not only inserted herself into the conversation, she snatched the phone from Jojo's hand. This is perfect for your website. People are going to eat this up. So much for my good mood. I knew exactly what she'd say, but I asked anyway. What website? The one I created for you. Darlene had the good graces to blush. The wonderful Witchardly world of Tessa Lamar. Dottie gasped. Grandma sighed. Even Harris, who couldn't possibly understand what had happened, shook his head. Me? I stood there gobsmacked, unable to speak or move or think straight. Bryson and Aaron scrambled to their feet and grabbed their phones from the sideboard. I watched in silent horror as they typed, scrolled, and scowled.
Do you know what you've done?
Bryson's voice filled the room. Much to my surprise, Grandma didn't scold him for yelling. She stared at Darlene with the same look of disappointment as the rest of us. My mother took a step back. I know you aren't allowed to advertise for the medicine shop, but this is different. Tessa's a fairy. Folks will want...
You put her name, phone number, and our address on the internet.
Aaron didn't shout. He didn't have to. The tone of his voice made me shiver, and I hadn't done anything wrong. Jolene handed me back my phone. I took one look at the screen and groaned. Not only had Darlene plastered my contact information all over the web, she'd included photos of our wedding, my high school graduation, and several frizzy-haired, big-bellied pregnancy shots. How could you do this, Mama? I was only trying to help you start a real business. I'll take the damned thing down. She threw her hands up. Why is everyone overreacting?
Overreacting?
This time Aaron raised his voice.
You've broadcast to every psychopath with an internet connection that Tessa's a psychic who works homicides and told them exactly where to find her.
Chapter 30. Bryson slammed the cabinet door hard enough to rattle the dishes inside.
You're not going alone.
How do you expect me to counsel Emily with you in the room? I motioned in his general direction. The woman is traumatized. You're not exactly giving off warm and fuzzy vibes right now. One look at you, and she'll clam up tighter than a camel's butthole in a sandstorm. He clenched his jaw, but couldn't quite keep from grinning.
That's pretty tight.
Which is why I'm going alone. I slid my foot into my sneaker and spread my knees. With my belly hanging between my thighs, I reached for the shoe and came up short. Well, this sucks.
I'll wait in the car.
What's the point? You won't know if something happens inside the house.
I'll know.
He folded his arms. Aaron and Harris are working on fixing the veil. Someone needs to stay here with the kids. Leaning to the left, I lifted my right thigh and set it on my left knee. While I could tie the sneaker in this position, it threw my center of gravity out of whack. I almost fell over. Dang it!
I'll shift into the Great Hawk and watch through the window.
Bryson knelt in front of me and tied my shoes. The simple act of mercy made me all gooey inside, but when he glanced up, I turned into a giant puddle of mush. I'd waited my entire life for a man to look at me the way Bryson did, like I was the only woman in the world. My throat tightened and my vision blurred. Caressing his cheek, I whispered, I love you. He turned his head and kissed the palm of my hand. Aaron stood in the entryway to the kitchen, watching the interaction with a similar expression as Bryson's. The tension of the previous days had left his face. His bright blue eyes softened, and his lips parted, making him look younger, more vulnerable. I thought you and Harris were working? My voice came out breathier than I'd intended.
Taking a break?
I crooked my finger, and he came closer. Aaron captured my chin between his thumb and forefinger, lifted my face, and slanted his mouth over mine. Still on his knees, Bryson slid his arms around my waist and nuzzled my belly. In those few stolen moments, I felt like anything was possible. Mommy, you have to see this, Jolene called from the living room. The guys eased back, smiling like two kids caught eating a bowl of cookie dough. Help me up. I held my arms out zombie style. Bryson took one hand, Aaron took the other, and together they hoisted my rather wide backside out of the chair. I made my way to the computer desk. What is it? Please tell me Darlene didn't take out ads. She clicked over to a different web page. They're showing Vampires Suck at the fancy auditorium downtown. I read the headline. New season premiere. That's awesome. It's like a big Hollywood party right here in Orlando. JoJo twirled her hair around her index finger. Would you ask Micah if he could get us tickets? You're friends, right? I loved that she'd stopped the silent treatment, but I wouldn't make promises I couldn't keep. We aren't friends, JoJo. I met him after someone hurt his dad. Killed, not hurt. I know his dad was murdered. It's all over the internet. She clicked back to the previous website. See? Behind me, Aaron sucked in a breath. What's wrong? I turned, surprised to find him staring at the screen with his mouth hanging open. He pointed to an image of Micah Sterling standing with his mother in front of their home.
Can you zoom in on the guy in the background?
Jolene made the image larger, but the man's face pixelated. Aaron frowned.
Give me the URL. I'll have the cybercrimes department see what they can do.
Hold on. I can fix it. Jolene worked some sort of technological voodoo involving an internet search on the image, cutting and pasting, and a few tweaks in a graphics arts program. Within 5 minutes, the girl had created a clear image of Noah Campo. That's Micah's brother. A chill went through me. The elder Campo sibling hadn't exactly been friendly. But now, thinking back, I couldn't shake the feeling there was more to it than simple rudeness. I met him the other day.
I know him.
Aaron strode away from the desk, ran his hand over his head, and marched back.
He works at a local metaphysical shop. Son of a biscuit.
Jolene rolled her eyes. Bryson watched the conversation from the corner. He hadn't said a word since JoJo had called us in from the kitchen, but his rigid posture told me he had questions. I didn't have time to get into a huge discussion, but I'd never be able to focus on Emily until I knew what had upset Aaron. How do you know Noah? He gave JoJo's shoulder a little squeeze.
Go play with TJ.
I tensed, waiting for her to throw a fit. She flashed her father a smile, hopped up, and left without a hint of attitude. I stared after her. Not freaking fair. Aaron glanced between Bryson and me.
You two might want to sit.
I parked my butt on the edge of the couch and waited. Bryson didn't move.
I went to the metaphysical shop down on Gore Street when I first started having the weird dreams.
Aaron fidgeted with the sling holding his arm.
Noah offered to help me make sense of what was happening.
How long has this been going on? My chest tightened to the point I fought to get air into my lungs. Why didn't you come to us?
A couple of months.
He met my gaze.
You've been busy with the pregnancy. I didn't want to worry you. Why not come to me?
Bryson's voice lacked emotion. I'd heard him use the same tone several times, usually when I'd hurt his feelings.
Same reason,
Aaron said. Bryson and I exchanged glances.
That's not entirely true.
Aaron stood, walked to the desk, and turned. The position put him farther away from us, but it also gave him the advantage of being able to watch our reactions simultaneously.
At first, I didn't know what to make of the dreams. I figured I'd do some research on my own before I brought them up.
And then you met Noah. It killed me he hadn't thought he could come to us.
Yes.
He stared at the ceiling as if he expected to find the correct answer written up there.
It's tough being the weak one. He said I had a gift.
You do, but I still don't understand why you haven't said anything before now. I paused, remembering the night I thought he'd died while watching the romance movie. I thought you were dead the first time you dream-walked in front of me. You knew what was going on, but you acted like you didn't. You lied to us.
By omission, yes.
He hung his head as far as his broken collarbone would allow.
I didn't realize what was really going on with me until that night.
A piece of the puzzle snapped into place. An ugly piece that scared the ever-loving crap out of me. Tank said something about Lulu spending all their money on psychic classes. Her spirit said his name and men, as in mentor. I think Noah is the link that ties the murders together. Aaron frowned.
What does he have to do with Mrs. Clemens?
I'm not entirely sure. I tapped my lips. Did you see the guy in the black hoodie near the family cemetery plot? He shook his head.
I thought he was one of the men who dug up the body.
Darlene said he attacked the gravediggers and stole the money.
What money? What grave?
Bryson's voice rose. I'll explain on the way to Emily's. I cringed and turned back to Aaron. Text Darlene Noah's picture. See if she recognizes him.
Will do.
He furrowed his brow.
But that still doesn't explain how Noah knew about the Clemens.
No, but if she IDs him, it might be enough for Jankowski and Helms to bring him in for questioning. Aaron made a sour face.
Maybe.
Bryson nodded to the clock.
I'm taking Tessa to her appointment. When we return, we will continue this conversation. There's been too many secrets and things left unsaid in our relationship. It's time we were honest with one another.
I had a feeling there was more to it than me not telling him about the gravediggers. Much more. What secrets?
Some topics are too important to rush through. We need time to hear and understand one another,
Bryson said. Aaron nodded, as if he knew what he referred to. Evidently, I'd spent the previous months living in the dark thinking all was well in our world. What topics? Does this have to do with what Scarlett said? The men stared at each other, but neither spoke. I threw my hands up. Forget it. I don't have time to wait for the two of you to clue me in on what's going on.
Tessa,
they said in unison. Aaron, send the text to Darlene. I stood and immediately regretted it. My belly tightened to the point I couldn't breathe. I froze, waiting for the pain to come, but it didn't. Freaking Braxton Hicks.
Something wrong?
Bryson closed the distance between us in 2 strides. It's nothing. I waved him off. But if you insist on driving me, I suggest you get your keys. Chapter 31. The frequent and urgent need to use the potty struck me about the same time as the morning sickness. While the latter left after about the 12th week, the former only intensified. I emerged from the bathroom and had to turn around and go again. Gah! Give me another minute. Aaron stood in the hall wearing an expression that reminded me of TJ clinging to his stuffed rabbit. Uncertain and frightened.
I spoke to Bryson. We agreed that I should drive you.
The change took me off guard. So much so, my middle tightened again. I jammed my fist into my lower back to ease the tension.
Are you okay?
Yes, but I think stress is causing me to have Braxton Hicks contractions. If things don't calm down soon, I'm going to have to run away from home and check into a hotel under a pseudonym to get some rest.
You should postpone meeting with Emily until tomorrow.
I'll be fine. As much as I'd love to, I didn't feel right about canceling. It had taken courage for her to reach out to me. I wasn't about to make her regret it. Bryson seemed pretty set on going with me. What changed his mind? Aaron sighed.
I want to talk to you on the way over.
Shouldn't you spend this time learning from Harris? He won't be here forever. I didn't know why I argued, other than the fact I felt like the sponge at the bottom of a barrel of dirty water. I didn't want to get into our alleged relationship problems with one of them, only to have to do it again with the other.
He's resting. Says there's a storm coming.
That's odd. I glanced at the darkening sky. I wonder if he means an actual storm or if he's speaking in riddles.
Don't read into it. We're due for some rough weather tonight.
Aaron jangled the keys and wiggled his brows.
Be nice, and I'll hand these over.
Like that's a big concession. You aren't supposed to drive with your arm in a sling. I huffed and walked to the door. Let's go while I can still fit behind the steering wheel.
You're still as beautiful as the day I met you in that coffee shop.
Butter me up all you want. I'm still upset with you. I slid into the driver's seat, pulled up the GPS app, and headed for the highway. Like I told Bryson, you can't come in with me. He took the phone from me.
I know Emily.
Like you know Noah? I remembered how the tech had blushed when she'd talked about him. So help me, if you tell me you used to date her, I'll turn this car around.
It's nothing like that. We've worked quite a few cases together.
He chuckled.
I'll wait outside if she prefers to talk to you alone, but I might be able to help. I know what it's like to be shell-shocked after a gruesome case.
Fine, but you need to wait outside until I ask her. I listened as a disembodied voice told me to take a left onto the highway. What did you want to talk to me about? He drew a deep breath.
I'm jealous.
Well, that was blunt. I nodded and waited for him to explain.
I'm pretty sure you're carrying Bryson's baby.
You can't know that, and it doesn't matter either way. I glanced at him and sighed. Sorry. Go on.
Face it, Tessa. I've always been the odd man out in this relationship. The human liability you two have to protect.
He stared out the window.
The best defense I have is my gun, and it's worthless against ghosts and creatures from the spirit world.
It broke my heart that he believed himself a burden, but I couldn't have disagreed more. While I hated violence, bullets had stopped the psycho who'd kidnapped Jolene, the Christmas killer, and not one, but two conjurers who'd tried to kill me. They worked just fine against most everything else. He ignored my comment.
I didn't come to you two about the dreams because even if I am a dream walker, it's a lame power.
It's not lame. He frowned.
I'm Robin, and you two are Batman and Captain Marvel.
I bit back a comment about him mixing comic book franchises. As much as I wanted to deflect the seriousness of the situation with humor, I couldn't. You have no idea how much Bryson and I depend on you, do you? He lifted his shoulder as if to shrug, but winced.
If you say so.
You might not realize it, but we are stronger with you. Our magic is stronger. You aren't Robin, you're... I drew a blank. You're a power booster, or the Avenger that holds the team together.
There isn't a single Avenger who holds them together.
Aaron grinned.
But I love you for trying.
I love you too. And I'm not just saying that. I can't imagine my life without you. I took the exit into a historic section of town and bounced down a cobblestone street. Once again, my belly tightened.
Is the baby kicking?
He rested his hand on the top of my tummy.
Whoa, it's really tight and hard.
I snickered. There's a dirty joke waiting to happen in that sentence.
I'm serious. Are you okay?
He grinned, but he sounded more nervous than amused. I'm fine. It's just Braxton Hicks. You know, false labor. I gave him the side eye. Are we okay? He nodded.
I realized how stupid I was being tonight when I saw you with Bryson in the kitchen. The way you looked at him about killed me until you turned and looked at me the same way.
Funny. I thought the same thing about the two of you. I couldn't help but smile. You two balance each other out. He's serious and intense. I can count on you to make me laugh and remind us to enjoy life. He nudged my side.
I could be serious.
And Bryson can be funny. That's not the point. I pulled into Emily's driveway. The point is, I need you both.
I feel the same.
He met my gaze and edged closer.
Forgive me for being a jackass.
Always. I pressed my lips to his. The kiss started sweet as a whisper, but ended with me debating the logistics of getting busy in the back seat. That was until Aaron sucked air between his teeth. Sorry, did I hurt you? I reached for him, but hesitated, not knowing where to touch him.
I zigged when I should have zagged.
He nodded to the house.
Ready?
The wind picked up and fat raindrops fell from the sky. Perfect. Just perfect.
There's the storm Harris warned me about.
He gave me his patented boy-next-door smile.
We could wait it out in the car. With a little care and creativity, I think we could make it work.
As tempting as that is, between my belly and your collarbone, we'd better not. I checked the address one more time before walking to the dark porch. She must have forgotten to turn on the light. Aaron leaned over the railing and looked into the front window.
The TV is on.
Stop peeping before you scare her to death. I rang the bell. I thought you said you'd wait in the car.
I will once you're inside.
No one answered. More concerning, I didn't hear anyone moving around inside. Old houses like Emily's had more creaks and groans than Grandma May on a cold morning. I would have heard her walking across the floor. I knocked hard enough my knuckle protested. Emily? It's Tessa. Nothing. Aaron said,
She could be in the bathroom or on a call.
I don't suppose any of this looks familiar to you? I had deja vu again. The only thing different between this situation and the Clemens was I didn't need to pee. Scratch that. I always need to pee. He turned for the steps.
Let's check around back.
Go ahead. I'll wait here in case she answers. I frowned at the water pouring from Emily's gutters. I really didn't want to get soaked.
I'm not leaving you here alone.
He stood there with his arms folded as if daring me to argue. You know how I said you and Bryson were opposites? I marched down the stairs and followed him around the corner. Sometimes you two are just alike.
I'll take that as a compliment.
His lack of smile or grin or eyebrow wiggle worried me. Aaron seemed more unnerved by the situation than he'd let on.
The door is open.
The rain lightened up, but not soon enough. A rivulet of water ran down the center of my back. I drew a deep breath and caught a whiff of the all-too-familiar odor of boo-hag. Smell that? He put his index finger against his lips and motioned for me to stand closer to the house. I pressed my back to the wood siding and sent up a prayer for Emily and for our safety. Aaron disappeared through the back door. Seconds turned to minutes. My stomach hardened again, only this time it hurt a little. That's it. If we get out of here alive, I'm talking to the chief about an early maternity leave. Aaron emerged from the house with his phone to his ear. He met my eyes, frowned, and shook his head.
Samuels, there's been another murder. Same M.O.
Noah Campo isn't the connection. It's us, I whispered more to myself than to him. Frowning, Aaron nodded and walked a few feet away. I couldn't figure out how the killer knew we were coming to see Emily. She'd called during dinner at Grandma May's. Tapped phone? I thought back to the conversation I'd had with Darlene about checking on the gravediggers. She'd told me in the car without any witnesses. A ghost? Do I have a hitchhiker? I wanted to pass out at the thought, but that wouldn't do anyone any good. However, I had talents. Magical skills that had helped solve more than a few murders. I headed for the door. Aaron covered the phone.
Where are you going?
To read the scene.
Tessa, wait.
I didn't wait. Besides the horrendous smell, Emily's house was cozy. She'd decorated in farmhouse chic right down to the eucalyptus wreath hanging on her kitchen wall. Standing in her home made me feel like I knew her. Before, I'd seen her as a friendly crime scene tech, but now she was a woman who liked old-fashioned things and had a flair for decorating. I followed the odor to the master bathroom and had to grab the door jamb to stay upright. Emily lay on the pretty black and white penny tiles. As with the others, the killer had removed her skin. All of it, including her finger and toenails. Get it over with. I pressed my hand to the mirror and focused on the cold magic inside me. The part that even Bryson didn't quite understand. The part that had nothing to do with the Firebird or my Nunihi blood. Images of the past flashed through my mind in reverse order. Aaron finding the body. Emily lying on the floor dead for what seemed like hours, but was probably only minutes. What happened next made no sense. Emily stared at her reflection in the same mirror I pressed my hand against. Behind her, a skinless body lay on the floor. It's not her? The image swirled and changed, leaving me feeling like a passenger on Mr. Toad's wild ride. When the picture came back into focus, it all made horrible sense. Chapter 32. Aaron gawked like I was the Easter Bunny telling him that Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy had made off with his car.
Say that again.
The boo hag doesn't just steal the skins. She wears them. I wouldn't have believed it either, except I'd seen it in my visions.
That's...
He shook his head as if to clear his thoughts.
We can't prosecute a monster. Did you see anyone else in the room?
No. I understood his concerns, but at that moment, I wanted him to hold me. Heck, I wanted him to get me out of there. Unfortunately, my needs would have to wait. The police had invaded Emily's little bungalow. Worse still, Chief Rosen had asked to speak to me. As if the man had read my mind, the chief's unmistakable voice cut through the chaos of the scene.
Burns, Lamar, a word.
Aaron glanced toward the older man and frowned before lowering his voice.
Are you going to tell him what you saw?
Why wouldn't I? I didn't care for his tone, not one bit. Another false labor pain struck without warning. One minute I felt fine. The next, every muscle south of my boobs and north of my thighs tensed.
Another contraction?
Aaron pressed his hand to my belly. It's nothing.
Burns, Lamar, while we're young,
the chief shouted. Aaron met my gaze.
What if it's something? We should take you to the hospital.
The urgency in his voice surprised me and made me a little more than suspicious. Tell me you're not using this as an excuse to keep me from talking to Rosen? He sighed and ran his good hand over the back of his neck. I shook my head and marched to the chief. Rosen glanced between us and settled on Aaron's slang.
Burns, you're not on this case. In fact, you're not on any case. I seem to recall you're on medical leave. Sir, Tessa needed a...
The chief narrowed his eyes.
You'd better think twice before you say you're her driver.
Aaron sighed.
No, sir. Good.
He motioned a uniformed officer over.
Willis, drive Detective Burns home.
For a moment, I thought Aaron would argue. Thankfully, he chose to kiss my cheek and follow Officer Willis to his patrol car. Rosen turned to me and leaned close.
I've wanted to do this since you helped solve the Christmas killer case.
Sir? I had a good idea what he had in mind, but hoped I was wrong.
I need to see you in action. Follow me.
He marched to Emily's front door.
Everyone, take 5.
Detective Jankowski glared at me, but smoothed his expression when he turned to Rosen.
Sir, we haven't finished processing. I said take 5.
The chief's tone left no room for argument. CSI Tech, other detectives, and uniformed officers filed out of the house. Other than a few curious glances, no one said a word. Rosen closed the door and motioned to me.
Do your thing.
I already did, sir. I bit my lower lip. Aaron's warning bounced around in my head, but I couldn't allow fear to stop me from telling him the truth. There's something you...
Do it again, and I'd appreciate a commentary. I'd like to understand your process.
He smiled. Weird, considering I'd never seen him do anything other than frown while on duty. If it's all right with you, I'd rather not go back into the bathroom. I've already seen the killing. I'd like to know if anyone else was in the house. He nodded.
How does it work?
I'm not exactly sure why, but sometimes I can pick up images from reflective surfaces. Usually, it has to be an incident with high emotions.
Like a violent crime?
Yes, or an argument or sex. I hitched my shoulder. I see the visions from newest to oldest, which is why it's helpful for me to touch the objects as soon after the incident as possible.
Interesting.
Rosen folded his arms. I pressed my hand to the kitchen window. Since it was dark outside when the killing took place, glass might work. The chief tilted his head and narrowed his eyes. I got nothing except another Braxton Hicks contraction, which I did my best to ignore.
See anything?
I shook my head and touched a small mirror hanging near the door. Visions of police officers filled my mind. I saw myself entering the house, and then Aaron. I pulled a bit more magic to the surface. An old woman who bore a striking resemblance to Mrs. Clemens came through the door, followed by Noah Campo. Dizzy and a little nauseous, I dropped my hand. I saw the killers, a woman wearing a disguise, and Noah Campo.
Campo? The second Vic's son?
Yes. I knew better than to sit at a crime scene, but I had no choice. Pain ate its way from my lower back to my belly. I sank into a wooden chair and bent forward to catch my breath.
Lamar?
He took a few steps toward me, but stopped when a puddle of clear liquid formed at my feet. The unflappable chief of the Orange County Police Department had gone the same color as the inside of a raw potato. I would have laughed if it didn't hurt so damned much. The fact that I was in actual labor should have knocked me for 6, but it didn't. I accepted my situation with grace I didn't know I had.
Is that?
He pointed. My water broke. The contraction eased enough for me to think straight. Chief, Noah Campo teaches classes at a local metaphysical shop. I believe my cousin Lulu, the first victim, was his student.
And Clemens?
He fumbled with his phone, likely to call for help. Considering the number of officers waiting outside, I assumed the chief wasn't thinking straight. Dust the house. I suspect you'll find Mrs. Clemens' prints. I didn't want to get into the hows and whys. Not when my choices were to lie a little and get to the hospital, or explain the impossible and risk giving birth in the middle of a crime scene. Chapter 33. For the second time in 3 days, I walked through a crowd of police officers in wet pants. Thankfully, this time I hadn't had an accident, but my water breaking at a crime scene was almost as bad.
Call EMS,
Rosen shouted to anyone who would listen, which meant everyone. No! I grabbed his arm. It's not an emergency. I'm supposed to call my OB and tell him, not panic and call 911.
She's right, sir.
An officer with freckles and bright red hair stepped forward.
Took my wife 2 days to have our son after her water broke.
I blinked several times. First of all, the guy didn't look old enough to have a wife and child, and second, I couldn't imagine having contractions for 48 hours straight.
Great.
Chief Rosen squinted at the guy's name tag.
Murphy, you have experience with labor and delivery. You can drive Ms. Lamar to the hospital.
The guy went so pale his freckles looked like someone had drawn on him with a brown marker.
Sir, Go and don't screw it up. This is Detective Burns' wife.
Rosen motioned for me to follow Murphy. I patted my pockets, and a tendril of pure, unadulterated panic seized me. My purse and phone are in the car, but Aaron has the keys.
Murphy, check to see if the car is unlocked.
My coworker's stares bore into me like dozens of tiny insects. I wanted to sit or hide or curl up under a rock.
The car is locked. The Slim Jim won't work. It has a key fob,
Murphy said.
I'll call Burns. Go with him in his patrol car.
He motioned again, this time with more emphasis on the poor soul he'd deemed worthy to drive me.
Now, Lamar.
I offered the redhead a quick smile and followed him to his vehicle. Thank you. He opened my door but stood there holding the handle.
Do you need a towel?
I opened my mouth to speak, but another contraction stole my words. Wrapping my arms around my belly, I bent forward and gritted my teeth.
Right, never mind. Get in.
He guided me into the front seat and fumbled with the seatbelt. Between the ride in my uterus, my wet pants, and his tugging, I wanted to scream. Leave it.
But, ma'am.
Don't you ma'am me. I'll fasten it when... I couldn't speak past the pain. My childbirth educator taught us the contractions would go stronger and closer together, but the bitch hadn't said anything about the agony involved. Suddenly, the toaster method of delivery didn't sound so bad. As if the night couldn't get worse, the storm clouds opened again. The downpour came on so suddenly, the officers milling about outside Emily's cottage ran for cover.
Maybe I need a towel.
Murphy slid into the driver's seat, removed his soaking wet jacket, and tossed it in the back. I ignored him. He put the car in drive and navigated us toward the highway.
You good?
Between the rain and him constantly looking at me, I honestly didn't know how he knew where to turn. Peachy, watch the road.
Don't worry, I know these streets. I grew up in College Park.
He drummed on the steering wheel.
Could you buckle up now? You know the slogan, click it or ticket, and all.
I wanted to punch him in his howdy-doody-looking face. Grabbing the seatbelt, I made a show of pulling the strap across my belly. In the movies, the passengers see the oncoming collision in slow motion. Flashing headlights, screeching tires, a look of shock, and then, bam! Beautifully choreographed bodies and shattered glass dance in slow motion to equally beautiful music. In real life, everything happens in the blink of an eye.
Tessa.
Like a prince, Aaron woke me with a whisper and a kiss. Unlike in the fairy tales, he had to help the princess sit upright because she was too pregnant to do it herself. I took a moment to orient myself to my surroundings. The walls were made of logs. Cozy quilts of every imaginable color covered the bed. A huge stone fireplace took up one side of the room. Bryson's cabin in the Smoky Mountains? How did we get here?
We're in your dream.
Aaron tucked my hair behind my ear.
Sweetheart, I need you to remember what happened.
I had no idea what he was talking about, nor did I care. The quilts smelled like Bryson, like home. Burrowing beneath them, I closed my eyes and sighed. I like this dream. Aaron pulled the covers back.
Tessa, you left the crime scene in labor. There was an accident.
I had every intention of ignoring him, But his words rang true. Too true. All at once, I remembered the truck barreling into the squad car. Murphy's surprised shout echoed through my mind. And the pain. My God, the pain. Aaron pulled me closer.
We found the car, but you're missing. Do you know where they took you?
No. Though the fire roared and someone had layered quilts on top of me, I couldn't stop shaking. I was in so much pain. He kissed the top of my head.
I know. Bryson and I felt it.
I jerked free of his embrace. My water broke. The baby was coming. Aaron nodded.
Please, try to remember where you are. We can't sense you.
My brain slowly came back online. A blip of missing time here and there. But I recalled being lifted out of the police cruiser. They put something over my head. I couldn't see. A man and a woman, Noah and Emily.
It wasn't Emily.
Right. My body ached, but the sensation felt far away, like a scar from a childhood injury, a memory of pain. The boo hag was wearing her skin.
I need you to try to wake up now. Try to see where you are and come back to me, okay?
How? The pain grew more insistent, more focused, more real. Shivering, I woke on a concrete floor. My first instinct was to draw a deep breath. Big mistake. The wretched odor of boo hag coated the back of my throat. Lucky for me, pain stole my breath and my urge to vomit. While I had no idea how far apart my contractions were, I had no doubt they were stronger than before. Much stronger. I gritted my teeth and fought the urge to cry out. Grandma loved to say, "This too shall pass." I'd never given the old line much thought until then. I focused on breathing and the knowledge I'd finally hold my child when this was over. The pain would pass.
You're awake.
Noah Campo stood over me holding a humongous knife.
That's a shame.
Why? It took everything I had to utter the single syllable. It was a meaningless question if taken at surface level. Why was it a shame I woke up? But that's not what I wanted to know. Why are you doing this to me?
Your cousin was right. You're a gifted witch, and so are your husbands.
Noah crouched beside me and turned my face toward his.
But that's not all you are, is it?
Keep him talking. He can't cut my throat while he's talking. I clung to the thought, even if it made little sense. Another contraction built inside me. Knowing I had only seconds before it would make it impossible to speak, I said, "How did you find out?"
Once I realized Aaron was the real deal, I cast a tracking spell. Imagine my surprise when he led me to the same woman that white trash whore Lulu kept going on about.
I might have thought the same about her, but that didn't mean he had the right to. Breathing my way through the pain, I focused inward on my magic. The cold energy of the grave, the heat of the firebird, ready and waiting below the surface, utterly useless until the baby was born.
It was pure luck that he'd shredded the veil.
He eyed the knife. They were watching us from the veil? Or were they going back and forth? Either way, how did we miss it? I glanced around in hopes of figuring out where they'd taken me. If I could get back to Aaron, Quinn and I had a chance of surviving. A metal toolbox sat beside a workbench. Along one wall, someone had filled shelves with all manner of paint cans, boxes, and bins. A garage. I'm in a garage. Emily? No, not Emily. The boo hag wearing her skin. walked into the room.
What are you waiting for? Cut it out of her.
Cut it out? Oh, God, please, no. My heart stopped. They didn't want me. They wanted my son. Why?
It's not easy to remove a child from the womb.
He shrugged.
Besides, she's awake now. Can't risk the neighbors hearing her screams.
Do it. Dawn approaches.
She stared at my belly and licked her lips.
The veil is thinnest before sunrise.
Is she going to eat my baby? My voice came out in a cracked wheeze.
Not exactly.
Noah tightened his grip on the knife and lowered it toward my belly. Not exactly? What the hell did that mean? I curled myself around my unborn child. Please, no, you'll cut him.
You mustn't damage the skin,
The boo hag hissed.
it must be pristine.
I know. No holes except the umbilical cord, and the sun must not have touched it.
He wiped his forehead on his sleeve.
Relax. Your new body will be perfect.
She's not going to eat him. She's going to possess him. I had to do something, but with the contractions coming so close together, I couldn't think straight, nor could I hope to overpower them without using magic. Noah groaned.
I can't do it with her lying like that. Roll her to her back and drain her.
The creature masquerading as a woman straddled me and forced me to my back. I couldn't tell if it was the contraction or the pressure of her weight resting on my belly, but I felt as if some invisible force was trying to turn me inside out. I feared she'd crush Quinn before her psychotic handler could cut him from my womb. The boo hag wrenched my arms above my head and leaned forward as if to kiss me. Memories of the shadowy figure riding Aaron filled my mind. Two things occurred to me. If Bryson could injure her shadow form, so could I. And I wasn't afraid to die. In fact, I welcomed it, as long as death came after I'd given birth. Chapter 34. Aaron! I ran through a forest. The thick underbrush lashing at my legs, I struggled to keep my footing on the rain-slick ground. This dream felt different from the last, less real somehow.
Tessa!
His voice echoed off the swaying trees. Where are you? Lightning flashed overhead, partially illuminating the trees. The place seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it.
Over here.
He stood in the center of swirling wind. The miniature tornado made it difficult for me to make out the details of his face, but even in the strange dreamscape, I recognized his energy. I can't reach you.
Where did they take you?
His voice rose over the howling wind. A house. I think I'm in a garage. Noah mentioned neighbors. I left out the part about said neighbors hearing me scream. I'm sorry. That's all I know.
We have to find you. Is there anything else? Any clue?
He knelt beside a skinless body. I'll go back and try again. Every step took more effort than it should have. It felt as if my feet weighed 50 pounds each, but I fought to keep moving. Was there another murder?
Not yet, but there will be soon.
The wind cleared, allowing me to see the pain etched on Aaron's face. He drew a shaky breath.
We're running out of time.
Don't worry about me. I won't stay dead long. The Firebird will rise, remember? I reached for him, but my hand passed through his form. Why can't I touch you?
We aren't in your dream this time. This is a foretelling.
Listen to me. I'll be okay. It's not me they're after, it's the baby. You have to save Quinn. Aaron balled his hands into fists.
You don't understand.
I glanced from him to the body lying on the ground. Who is she?
It's you, Tessa. It's you. If we don't find you soon...
I woke screaming. Fire burned through my lower abdomen and there was blood. So much blood. Despite the unbearable pressure pinning me to the floor, I writhed, unable to breathe or scream or plead for mercy. A soft cry filled the room. It reminded me of a baby mountain lion calling for his mother, but the sound didn't come from an animal. It was a newborn baby. My baby. The boo hag's feeding left me weak. The vicious wound across my belly left me broken and bleeding. All I had to do was let go and drift into the darkness. I'd died twice before, but death had come fast. A bullet to the heart and an explosion were like that. Quick. This was different. I had no concept of how long I remained alive on the concrete floor, only the unending agony. My son's constant cries shattered me. He needed me as much as I needed him, but I couldn't soothe him. Not yet. It's okay, little one. Mama's coming. I promise Mama's coming. The pain slowly ebbed, leaving a void in its place. I knew the process. My spirit would wake first, then my mind, and finally my body would reanimate. I had no choice except to wait for the ember of magic in my gut to spark to life. I laid there, fully aware of my surroundings, but unable to move. It seemed like an eternity had passed before I managed to move my fingers. Quinn's wails stopped, along with my sanity. I was too late. Grief threatened to pull me back into the darkness, but I couldn't allow it. I would not allow it. I'd make them pay. Rage, unlike anything I'd experienced before, filled me. All at once, a different kind of fire tore through my body. The Firebird surged forward, and in the space of a millisecond, she burst into being. The human side of me gladly relinquished control to the animal. Flames erupted from her feathers, burning hot enough to melt the floor beneath her feet. The Firebird didn't understand loss or emotional pain on the same level as me. She had no use for remorse or regret, only revenge. A female screamed. The creature was not of this world, yet she wore the skin of a woman. Abomination. The Firebird turned her attention to a human male. Blood. Her blood covers him and the child he holds. A small, still child with skin as pale as the moon. A cloud of magic, a mixture of fire and ice surrounded the baby. The Firebird recognized her essence and that of her human mate in the crackling energy. My child. Mine. The Firebird spread her wings and prepared to incinerate them all. The creature, the man, the lost child, and the entire structure. The baby's fingers twitched. The human part of me never would have seen it, but the Firebird had a predator's gaze. She could detect movement from hundreds of yards away. Quinn's alive? I wrenched control back from the spirit animal and shifted to my human form. Naked, healed, and hair flaming, I lifted my arm. "Give me my son!" Staring open-mouthed, Noah Campbell clutched Quinn tighter to his chest and took a step back. I had zero intentions of allowing him to walk out of that garage, but I needed him to put the baby down. Or did I? Bryson and Aaron were immune to my flames. Surely Quinn was too. Can I risk it? I'd never survive it if I hurt my son. Still wearing Emily's skin, the boo hag watched the goings-on. Her face remained passive, as if she didn't give a crap about the outcome, but her energy told a different story. The creature needed the baby for what I didn't know, but I had a feeling her life depended on it. Too damned bad. Aiming at Noah, I drew flames into my palm and spread my fingers. At the last second, I jerked my hand in her direction and released a stream of fire. Normally, my flames couldn't burn a spirit, but I hoped catching her inside a body would make her vulnerable. The skin the boo hag wore went up like a Roman candle. At first, I thought I'd killed her, but the trickle of dark magic along my spine told me otherwise. Noah stared at the mound of charred flesh. His mouth moved as if he were speaking, but no sounds came out. His knees buckled, but he managed to catch his balance.
"No, you can't leave me here. Come back."
Movement on my left caught my attention, but when I turned, nothing was there. My hair lifted from my shoulders as if blown by a gust of wind. However, nothing else in the garage moved. Splitting my attention between the baby and my surroundings, I drew the Firebird forward slowly. If I gave her too much control, I'd shift forms. I couldn't allow that to happen, not with her wanting to burn the place down with Quinn inside. The creature zipped past me again. This time, she scraped what felt like scalpels across my spine. The jolt of pain broke my concentration, and my spirit animal lurched forward. It took every ounce of my willpower to keep her at bay. The creature swiped at me again. This time, she sliced lower and caught the backs of my knees. I crumpled like a sandcastle in a tsunami. Quinn let out a blood-curdling scream. I lifted my head in time to catch Noah making a run for the side door. "Stop!" The fear of him leaving with my child gave me the strength I needed to push past my fear and trust the Firebird. She burst into life for the second time. Scanning the area, she locked onto Noah and let loose a torrent of fire to block his escape. Oh, God. The smoke. The baby. The memory of Bryson's hawk damaging the boo hag while she was in spirit form gave me an idea. If he could do it, so could we. Screeching, the Firebird surged forward and clamped her beak around the creature's neck. The boo hag hissed and slashed at her, but the mythical bird refused to let go. The human side of me tried to ignore the sounds of tearing flesh and bone grinding against bone, but the Firebird loved it. Her powerful beak closed bit by bit until she'd severed the creature's head from its body. The boo hag's spirit dissipated like a cloud of dark smoke on the breeze, but I highly doubted I'd killed her. She'd be back, probably sooner than I'd like. I shifted back to my human form. Exhausted from using so much magic in such a short amount of time, I struggled to stand. "Put the baby down and run." Wild-eyed, Noah looked from the fire, to me, to the baby, to the remains on the floor. Drawing more flames into my palm, I took a step in his direction. He shook his head and tightened his grip on Quinn.
"You'll kill me, too."
The baby let out a startled cry that I felt in my bones. A quick death is too good for you. I'd rather see you rot in prison. I hadn't decided what I wanted to do with him, but he didn't need to know that. It's okay, little one. It's almost over. Noah moved his hand up Quinn's back to his neck. Before I could move, he held my son out like a puppy who'd made a mess on the carpet. My heart stuttered. I'd imagined the first time I'd see my child's face, but I never dreamed it would be like this. Still covered in blood and goo, Quinn's mouth hung open as if frozen mid-cry. I knew it was impossible. Newborns couldn't see more than a few feet. But the little guy seemed to stare directly into my eyes. Scarlett's words filled my head. He has more magic than either of his parents. He won't burn. I raised my hand again, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't take the chance. Noah must have seen my indecision because he ran for the door. Stop! I threw the flames at his feet. The hem of his pants caught fire. I hadn't meant to burn him, not until Quinn was safe. Suppressed magic, like emotions, had a way of spilling out bigger than intended. Lurching forward, I grabbed Noah's wrist with one hand and supported my son with the other. A flash of heat filled my palm and burned through skin and muscle and tendons until I felt his bones beneath my fingertips. It happened so fast, the man didn't have a chance to cry out before he fainted. It took every ounce of my restraint not to barbecue him, but in the end, he'd get what he deserved. I'd make damned sure of it. Sleep. Naked and cradling my son to my chest, I walked out of the garage. I recognized the place instantly. Noah Campo had taken me to his parents' house. Chapter 35. The first squad car screeched to a stop outside the house 3 minutes after a neighbor spotted me outside the garage. Bryson arrived 10 minutes later as EMS loaded me and the baby into the back of an ambulance.
Tessa, thank God.
He put his foot on the bumper as if to join us.
Sir, you can't be here.
The paramedic made the mistake of grabbing Bryson's arm. He glared down at the man's hand before meeting his gaze.
I'm her husband.
The paramedic turned to me.
Do you want him with you?
Please. I glanced down at the baby and smiled. The little booger had turned his head in the direction of Bryson's voice. He folded his big body onto the bench beside the gurney. Tears streaming down his face. He stared at Quinn.
I thought...
We're okay. A few bruises, but okay. I wanted nothing more than to bask in the glow of the moment, but I couldn't. Not until we put an end to the boo-hag. It's not over. He barely spared a glance in my direction.
It's over for now. Darlene's positive identification put Noah at the Clemens. He's being charged with 4 homicides, kidnapping, and attempted murder.
I doubted anything could tear his attention away from the infant, except the truth. They may have arrested Noah, but she's still out there. She'll come for the baby again. The color drained from his face.
Let her try.
I took his hand. Listen to me. It's not that simple. She goes between worlds. The paramedic climbed into the back of the ambulance and closed the door.
Mrs. Lamar, we'll get you to the hospital as soon as possible, but I need to evaluate the baby.
He's healthy. I held him a little tighter. He softened his expression and voice.
I understand, but labor and delivery needs a report.
A ball of panic formed in my chest. I didn't know this man. He could be the boo-hag for all I knew. No. As if he'd read my mind, Bryson placed his hand on the paramedic's bare arm. His magic filled the tight confines of the ambulance. After a second or two, he turned to me.
It's all right.
I gathered my courage and handed my son to the stranger. He removed the bath towel the neighbors had given me, and his eyes went wide.
Big boy you have here. Are you in any pain?
I shook my head.
Has he cried?
He ran his thumbnail down Quinn's foot. The baby jerked his leg. Yes. I eyed the paramedic. The man hadn't smiled or given any signs of relief. Is he okay? The guy pressed a stethoscope to the baby's chest and listened for a few seconds.
Lungs sound clear. Pulse is normal and his reflexes are good.
I closed my eyes and sent up a quick prayer of gratitude.
It's great you maintained skin-to-skin contact. It helps with bonding and regulating his body temperature.
The paramedic loosely wrapped Quinn and handed him back to me.
I'm going to start your IV.
I don't need one. Shifting into the Firebird had healed me, but I couldn't exactly tell him that. I mean, I feel fine. He gave me a patient smile, but beneath it, I'd swear he thought I was nuts or on drugs.
I understand, but it's protocol.
Okay, but try to get it on the first stick. I hate needles. I turned and focused on Bryson while the paramedic jammed a needle into my vein. Is Aaron meeting us at the hospital?
Soon.
He hadn't stopped staring at Quinn since he'd climbed aboard, but chose that moment to glance around the ambulance. Why isn't he looking me in the eye? Where is he?
Working.
One-word answers set my teeth on edge. Plus, I highly doubted anything could keep Aaron from spending time with his son. He's not supposed to be working. He's on medical leave. Was there another murder? Bryson tightened his jaw.
He's taking care of that veil problem.
He doesn't know about the boo hag. He'd likely heard Noah Campo was in custody and assumed I'd neutralized the creature as well. Memories of the last dream I'd shared with Aaron crashed into my consciousness. He said it wasn't a dream. We were seeing the future. A future where I was dead. A wave of nausea swept over me. I'm going to be sick. I placed Quinn in Bryson's arms and struggled to lean forward. The paramedic shoved a bean-shaped container in front of me.
Easy. Take deep breaths.
Nodding, I closed my eyes and brought my magic to the surface. Of all the things I couldn't do while pregnant, I'd missed being able to reach out to my mates the most. Aaron was close, but we were traveling away from him.
You're burning up.
The paramedic pressed a newfangled thermometer against my temple and gasped.
That's impossible. It's reading 110.
I had to get to Aaron. I turned to Bryson. He's in danger. He doesn't know about the boo hag. There was a murder in his prophecy dream. I saw the body. He thought it was me, but what if it wasn't?
Babe, it's okay. He's not physically.
Bryson's eyes widened at something behind me.
No, don't.
I turned in time to see the paramedic removing a needle from my IV port. What was that?
Something to help you relax.
The medication hit me like a Cat 5 hurricane. I zonked out to words like sepsis, hysterical, and her own good. I found myself in the same patch of woods where I'd last seen Aaron. This time, I recognized my surroundings. I stood near the retention pond at the entrance of the Campos neighborhood, but nothing around me seemed solid. Even the oaks came in and out of focus. Is it possible to be stoned in a dream? Aaron? I closed my eyes and searched for his energy, but something was wrong. I felt it all around me, instead of in one specific place. Aaron! I wandered toward the pond and found the tree he'd taken a picture of the day Mr. Campo was murdered. The top half lay a few feet from the broken trunk, exactly like he'd said it would be.
Second Vic located. I need backup. Repeat, I need backup.
Aaron's voice echoed through the dreamscape around me. Nothing here made sense. For the life of me, I couldn't tell if his spirit was here or if I'd heard his voice from the physical world. Aaron!
Tessa?
I caught movement from the corner of my eye and ran toward it, only to end up in the same damned place I'd started. Where are you?
Here.
He sounded farther away than before. Screw this. I'll have better luck finding him from the air. I shifted into the Firebird. As soon as I changed forms, I regretted it. The area might have resembled the Campos neighborhood, but I was definitely not in Florida anymore. Instead of trees and grass and shrubs, I found myself surrounded by spirits. No, not spirits. Energy. Every living thing on earth contained energy that connected it to the divine. I stood in the center of a ring of nature, but for the first time, I saw the magic of the creation process instead of the results. I turned my face toward the sky and froze. There were no stars or clouds above me, only an infinite space filled with all manner of human souls and darker, more frightening beings. Suddenly, taking flight didn't seem like such a great idea.
Tessa!
No longer an echo, Aaron's voice came from my left. Flying low to the ground, I followed the call of my mate's energy. The sight of him stole my breath. His magic and opalescent-colored spirit surrounded his physical form. As he had in the earlier dream, he knelt over the skinless body of a woman. Weirdly enough, the corpse had the same build as me. Even weirder, she had energy, dark, inky energy that swirled like oil on water. The Firebird called to her mate. Aaron glanced up and choked back a sob.
Tessa, thank God.
As much as I wanted to go to him in human form, I didn't dare shift back and lose sight of him again. Instead, I bobbed my head and screeched.
How is this possible?
He glanced from me to the body and back again.
I saw her kill you.
How the heck am I supposed to know? I'd never wished the freaking Firebird could speak more than I did at that moment. The corpse's hand shot up. Her fingers wrapped around Aaron's neck, and the dead woman pulled him toward her open mouth. Struggling to break free, he managed to land a few bone-crunching blows to her face, but she held tight. I stood, transfixed by the trail of magic leaving his parted lips and flowing into hers. He pulled and tugged, trying to pry her hand from his throat. I launched into the air. Wings blazing, I threw everything I had into the flames and covered them with fire. When the blaze died down, I couldn't believe my eyes. I knew Aaron wouldn't burn, but I'd hoped the boo-hag would go up like dry hay. Heck, I would have settled for her releasing him. But abso-freaking-lutely nothing happened. I had to do something, but I hadn't managed to burn a blade of grass. I was completely out of my league. If he dies here, will he die for real? Will he become soulless? Harris had said something about light defeating darkness, and Aaron had the brightest spirit I'd ever seen. However, I couldn't think of a way to weaponize him. I shifted back to my human form. Light defeats the darkness. Use your light as a weapon. Aaron's arms dropped to his sides and his head sagged. No! I closed my eyes and called to my ancestors. Charlie, I need you. Please. When I received no reply, I focused on the cold magic inside me. It came from darkness and death and destruction. If I could control her, I could force her to release him until we figured something else out.
If I can't have the son, I will have the father.
The boo-hag turned her skinless face toward me.
You must choose.
Before I could form a single thought, a series of gunshots tore through the air. The boo-hag jerked several times and went limp. The inky energy that had covered the corpse stilled. Aaron! I hurried to him and pulled him away from the corpse just to be safe. However, there was no need to worry. The gunshot wounds glowed with the same misty opal light as the man in my arms. How did you do that?
Magic bullets. You said to use my weapon and light.
Aaron grinned and collapsed against me with his sidearm still in his hand. That's not exactly what I meant. I eased the gun from his grasp and settled his head on my thigh.
But it worked, didn't it?
He stared up at me.
I swear I saw her kill you.
The spirit world seems different than the other times we've met here. Maybe it's an illusion or a foretelling. My heart raced. Or maybe you have the power to alter the future. He seemed to consider my words.
That'd be a hell of a superpower.
See? I told you your powers were cool. I brushed his hair back from his face. How do we get out of here?
You just have to wake up.
He swallowed hard.
Tessa, what she said. Am I Quinn's father?
Yes. Chapter 36. Exhaustion comes in many forms. There's the fulfilled kind after a day of yard work, the heavy kind after losing a loved one, and my all-time personal least favorite, the woozy kind after a paramedic shoots drugs into my IV. I pressed my hand to my temple and sent up a silent thanks for the person who'd dimmed the lights in my room. Rising from the hospital-issued recliner, Bryson whispered,
Welcome back. Someone's been waiting to see you.
Out of habit, I pressed my hand to my belly. It had gone from a watermelon to a mushy cantaloupe, but I'd worry about getting my figure back another time. Right then, all I wanted was my baby. How is he?
Clean bill of health.
He set my son in my arms and stretched out beside me on the narrow bed. Hi there, Quincy Emmett Charles. My voice cracked. I couldn't believe how utterly perfect he was. I ran my finger down the infant's cheek, and he turned his face into the touch. You sure do clean up well, little one. Bryson nuzzled into my hair.
I asked the family to give us some time alone, but I'm afraid wild horses won't be able to keep Graham May away for long.
I don't mind. I unwrapped the baby and settled him against my shoulder. He let out a little sigh that filled my heart until I thought it would burst. Have you heard from Aaron? I rested my head on Bryson's chest.
He'll be here soon.
Bryson tensed, but he was either too happy or too tired to hold it for long.
He told me what happened in the spirit world.
I shuddered at the memory. I couldn't stop her. Not here or there. Thank God Aaron ended her. Bryson went quiet for so long I wondered if he'd fallen asleep. When he finally spoke, his tone grew serious.
You were right before. I was rude to Harris. It's been a long time since I've encountered someone more powerful than me.
I tilted my face up so I could meet his gaze. Aaron and I had a similar conversation last night.
As did I.
He nodded.
But I didn't fully appreciate how he felt until I was in the same position. I'm glad it was Aaron who killed the boo hag. It'll go a long way in easing his insecurities.
Me too, but I'll never understand how men think. I fought to keep my eyes open. Between Bryson's warmth, my sleeping son, and the remnants of drugs in my bloodstream, I wanted a nap.
We have another small problem.
He gave me a half grin.
Dr. Dennison is very confused as to how you had a 10-pound baby hours ago, but have no physical signs that you gave birth.
Let him wonder. I wrinkled my nose. I'm not sure how I feel about having that kind of exam while I was out cold. He nudged my side.
He's going to have questions.
Funny, I don't remember a thing from right before the car accident until I woke up here. Bryson flashed me a dubious look. Aaron knocked and peeked inside.
You're awake.
Come and meet your son. I grinned and scooted closer to Bryson to make room. Aaron had stared death in the face and hadn't flinched, but the walk from the door to the bed seemed to scare him. I'd never seen him move so slow or unsure. I eased Quinn into the crook of my arm. It was the kind of moment we'd remember forever. I thought I should say something profound, but words failed me. Aaron cleared his throat and sat on the edge of the bed.
He's beautiful.
Want to hold him? He nodded and reached for the baby, but didn't seem to know where to put his hands.
Support his neck and his bottom.
Bryson grinned.
You're not going to break him. He's sturdy for a newborn.
Aaron glanced between us and held the infant as if he were made of dried dandelion petals that would blow away in the slightest breeze. Fuzzy from the drugs, I didn't notice the change in him right away. His arm is healed? Where's your sling?
It's the darndest thing. After I shifted, my shoulder didn't hurt anymore.
He spoke without taking his eyes off Quinn.
You shifted?
Bryson raised a brow. Aaron sat taller.
Seems I can change into a spirit without leaving my body on the floor.
Wow, I bet you could fly with us. Just when I thought life couldn't get any better. I laughed, startling the baby. Aaron's eyes widened.
Maybe you should take him.
Graham May marched into the room like her name was on the building. She zeroed in on Quinn, smiled, and took the infant from Aaron. Oh, Tessa, you did good. You all did good. Look at him. He's an angel. Thanks. I tugged Aaron closer. Since the family invasion had started, I wanted to be sandwiched between my mates. Dottie knocked and pushed the door open. Are you up for more visitors? They dressed me in a nursing gown that opened in the front. I did a quick survey to make sure all my parts were covered. Yes, ma'am. Jolene and TJ walked in as quiet as twin cat burglars. Dottie nodded to a set of plastic chairs against the wall, and they sat without as much as a peep. I stared in utter amazement. Did you bribe them? Ice cream from that fancy place where they mix the toppings in on a marble slab? Dottie peered over May's shoulder. I can't get over how big he is. Look at the way he's staring at you. That's because he knows I gave him his name. Graham May cooed at the baby. Bryson stood and embraced Dottie.
Thanks for bringing the kids. Why don't you sit next to Tessa and visit for a while?
Thank you. She sat and held my hand. The set of her jaw and sadness in her eyes told me she'd heard what I'd gone through.
I'm glad you're okay.
All's well that ends well. I hugged her tightly. Grandma sat beside the kids.
He's little now, but you two will have to look out for him once he's big enough to get around.
TJ's eyes went wide. I'm his cousin, but I could be a big brother, too.
You sure can.
Grandma made faces at the baby.
You hear that? He's gonna be your big brother.
Jolene chewed her lower lip. Mommy, can I talk to you for a minute? Sure, sweetie. I held my hand out to her. Erin moved to give her space beside me.
I think I'll take TJ down to the cafeteria. Anyone want anything?
Dottie said, I could use a cup of coffee. I'll go with you. The girl waited until they left the room before she spoke. I'm sorry for the way I was acting before. Bryson took the chair next to Grandma and joined her in fawning over the infant. Apology accepted. Wrapping my arms around her, I whispered, I can never replace your mother. But no matter what, you'll always be my daughter, even when you're old with babies of your own. I was so scared. She choked back a sob. Me too. But your dads and I will always do our best to protect you. I kissed the top of her head. Not that. I thought you wouldn't want me once you had your own baby. Oh, honey. I lifted her sweet face and met her gaze. Love doesn't work like that. The more people you have in your life, the more it grows. Another knock interrupted the moment. Jojo wiggled to get up, but I held her tight. Bryson opened the door, but rather than allowing the person inside, he stepped into the hall. Who in the world would he keep outside? The only other person I expected to see was Darlene. Even with her latest shenanigans, I couldn't imagine him keeping her from me. I nudged Jojo. Go see who it is. She hurried to the door, peeked outside, and let out a little squeal of delight. Never one to miss out on the fun, Grandma handed Quinn to me and went to investigate.
You're that boy from the TV.
My heart sank. I had no idea what Micah Sterling would want with me, but considering the circumstances with his brother, I doubted it was good. Let him in. Bryson returned and took up guard duty at the head of my bed. Micah came in carrying a bouquet so large I could barely see him for all the roses.
I'm sorry to bother you. These are for you.
Thanks. The flowers were gorgeous, but I still didn't understand the reason for the visit. He set them on the counter next to the sink.
They're from my mom. She wanted me to tell you thank you for believing her story. It gave her the courage to have a private conversation with Chief Rosen.
I'd never actually spoken to Mrs. Campo, but I was glad she'd found some sort of peace. Micah glanced from Jolene to me.
She's clinging to the belief that Noah was a victim, too.
I couldn't imagine how I'd feel if one of my kids had done a quarter of the things Noah had done. I supposed I'd cling to a fantasy, too. I wasn't completely honest with you before. My cousin saw the same thing as your mom.
Chief Rosen told her.
He flashed me his $500,000 per episode smile. Anyway, I'm not sure if you'll be up for it, but I have 2 tickets to the premiere. Yes! Jojo shot to her feet. I mean, please, Mommy, can we go? How can I say no to her dream night out? Thank you. We'd love to attend. Micah laughed.
You must be Jolene. I understand you're a fan?
OMG, yes. I've seen every episode at least 20 times.
Have you ever considered acting? You certainly have the face for it.
Jojo's mouth fell open. I used to be in beauty pageants.
Have your people call my people. We'll set up a screen test.
Bryson frowned.
Her people believe she can become anything she wants after college.
Daddy! She rolled her eyes. Laughing, Micah turned back to me.
I also have 3 duffel bags I believe belong to you.
Bryson clamped his hand on my shoulder.
They belong to someone else, but we'll see that he gets them.
Jed's new liver. Once again, just when I thought the day couldn't get any better, it did. Oh, my Lord in heaven! You're Micah Sterling! Darlene's shrill voice woke the baby. I spoke too soon. Chapter 37. The storms earlier in the month had brought cooler weather in time for Halloween. Jolene and TJ had scoured the internet for infant costumes. We'd settled on a set of Superman footy jammies. I didn't have the heart to tell them Quinn was too young to go trick-or-treating. After setting the last of the clean dishes in the drainer, I turned my attention to the scene outside the kitchen window. Grandma and Dottie sat in lawn chairs watching the kids play fetch with the dog. Aaron and Bryson hung a tire swing from an old oak tree. Life was good. Harris set his bag near the front door and turned to me with a smile.
Thanks again for your hospitality.
You don't have to leave so soon. I dried my hands on my way to look in on Quinn, sleeping in his porta-crib.
I'm needed back home.
The root doctor studied the baby.
Such power. He's going to do great things.
I appreciated the sentiment, but I refused to raise him any different from any other kid. For now, I'd settle for him sleeping more than an hour at a time. He chuckled.
Remember what I said? Folks fed baby screens with their milk for a long time before modern medicine told them it was bad.
I'll add a little cereal to his bottle in a couple weeks. I embraced him. I meant what I said. You're welcome to stay. He pulled back and met my gaze.
You wouldn't be worried about something, would you?
Harris, like the other men in my life, had read me like a flashing neon sign. Are you sure the hole in the veil is patched up enough to keep anything else from coming through? Over the previous week, Harris had been able to teach Aaron how to stitch up a metaphysical curtain. However, I would have felt better if the root doctor stuck around until the rips were 100% repaired.
Positive. And I'm confident Aaron will be able to finish stitching it up. These things take time.
He lowered his voice.
Now that he understands his gifts, he won't tear it again.
Thanks again for helping him. I still felt guilty for blaming Jolene, but how was I supposed to know Aaron had torn it while traveling through the spirit world?
You're welcome.
Harris tensed and turned to the window.
You have company.
I glanced outside and my heart did a somersault. That's Tank, TJ's daddy.
You have more before nightfall.
The root doctor clamped his hand on my shoulder.
Nothing stays the same forever. Change requires open minds and open hearts.
That sounds ominous. I hated riddles, but somehow I didn't need to consult with Charlie to figure this one out. I'd have a visitor, and from the sounds of it, he or she would be a pain in the butt. Don't suppose you'd give me a hint? Harris grinned.
You know how to reach me if you need me, but I doubt you will.
Outside, TJ's excited shouts pulled me from the conversation. Daddy! Tank climbed down from his enormous truck and hugged the boy for so long poor TJ had to wiggle his way free. Although I was no longer pregnant, my hormones hadn't gone back to normal. At least, That's what I told myself when my eyes filled with tears. I should get out there.
Go. I'll keep an eye on the little one.
Pulling on a jacket, I hit the porch steps at a quick pace. A wide grin split Tank's face.
Well, well, look at you. I'll go away for a few days and you lose what? 40 pounds?
10.5 of it is asleep in the house. I threw myself into his arms. I'm so glad you're home.
Me too.
His voice caught.
Thank you for looking after TJ. How's he doing?
I'm not gonna lie. He's struggling, but he'll be better now that you're back. I had so much to tell him about Noah Campo and the Boo Hag, but I hated to ruin his homecoming. When you're ready, we'll talk. Tank ran his hand over his mouth and nodded.
Do I smell barbecue?
You sure do, with all the fixins'. Graham May hugged him. Welcome home. The big guy sighed.
About that. Seems I lost my job while I was away.
She patted his arm.
Don't you worry. You and TJ can bunk in my Florida room until you get back on your feet.
A flash of emotion crossed his expression. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I had a feeling Tank didn't plan to stick around. The thought of TJ losing his father again made my chest tighten. Then again, maybe he planned to take the boy with him. I didn't know which was worse.
Dinner's ready when y'all are.
Dottie snuck in and gave Tank a quick kiss.
I missed you. Missed you too.
He shoved his hands in his back pockets.
I'll love you.
Bryson and Aaron took turns giving him the typical half-hug back slap men used to show affection.
Where's Darlene?
Tank grabbed TJ around the waist and set the boy on his shoulders. I hadn't seen much of my mother since the hospital. I assumed she was still bent out of shape about the website incident, and Bryson handing Mr. Clemens' loot to Jed. To be fair, the man needed a new liver a lot more than my mother needed a Mercedes and a new house. Graham May gave me a curious look. Oh, no. I pressed my hand to my chest. Was I supposed to call her? Bryson slung his arm around my shoulder.
Yes, but don't worry. I did. She should be here soon.
Harris stepped onto the porch with Quinn in his arms.
Somebody wants his mama.
Tank's eyes went wide.
That's one big boy.
I wish everyone would stop saying that. He's going to get a complex. I turned to retrieve the baby, but Aaron beat me to the punch. Despite his trepidation during the first couple of days, Aaron held the infant to his shoulder like a pro.
Something wrong?
Bryson whispered into my ear. Not a thing. I was just thinking how much I'm looking forward to finishing that romance movie I started on Grandma's birthday.
Take a break after lunch. Aaron and I'll clean up while you and Quinn curl up in Charlie's old recliner.
That's an offer I can't refuse. I turned as a rather expensive-looking sports car eased its way down the driveway. You sure Darlene didn't get her hands on some of the money? Bryson positioned himself between me and the cherry-red car.
I'm sure.
It could be Harris's ride. I nodded to the root doctor standing on our front porch. He shook his head.
I put the wards back up. No one besides blood relations can cross them.
Aaron joined us.
Who do we know that drives a Lamborghini? Tessa, take Quinn and the kids inside.
Bryson spoke in a low tone, but he might as well have shouted. Whoever, or whatever, had crossed the wards had set him on edge. Aaron deposited our child into my arms and turned away as if he expected me to obey. TJ, Jojo, go help Aunt Dottie set the table. I handed the baby to Tank. Get him and Grandma inside. Don't let anyone out until we give you the all clear. The big guy bristled.
Shouldn't you be the one going inside?
I didn't have the time or the patience to argue with a misogynist, so I hit a little below the belt. Depends on who or what steps out of that car. Tank did as I asked without another word. The Lamborghini parked next to Bryson's SUV. A man with long blonde hair and playboy looks stepped out. He glanced over the property, furrowed his brow, and checked his phone.
You have exactly 30 seconds to tell us why you're trespassing on private property before we remove you.
Bryson drew his magic to the surface, an obvious threat to anyone with preternatural abilities. I couldn't tell if the Firebird responded to her mate or if she sensed danger. Either way, she rose inside me so quickly the tips of my curls ignited.
Aha! I am in the right place.
The guy grinned at me.
You must be Tessa. Who's asking?
Once again, Bryson stepped in front of me. Much to my frustration, Aaron did the same. I loved them to pieces, but I didn't appreciate being treated like a helpless girl.
Name's Killian O'Rourke.
Blondie seemed friendly enough. That was, until I sensed his magic. It reminded me of a storm brewing over icy seas.
I have to say, this doesn't look much like a Witcherdly world.
I made a mental note to throttle Darlene. It was bad enough she'd put up a website, but she hadn't had to make me sound so darned corny. I stepped around to the wall of muscle. I'm Tessa. What can I do for you? Behind me, Bryson growled and Aaron sighed. Killian O'Rourke looked me over from my boots to my messy red bun and smiled. A real smile this time, not the flashy, ingenuous one he'd used before.
By the stars, you look just like her.
My pulse raced. I'd heard that once or twice before, but no one ever accused me of resembling Darlene. They said I looked like Achila, my birth mother. Who are you?
I am your brother.
Killian dipped his chin.
I'm afraid this isn't a true social call. Our father is in grave danger.
You've been listening to The Spirit Walker, Book 4 of the Tessa Lamar novels written by Kathryn M. Hearst. Narrated by Holly Adams, a member of SAG-AFTRA. Text copyright 2019 by Wyndham House. Production copyright 2023 by Wyndham House. If you've enjoyed this audiobook, look for The Spirit Dancer, the stunning conclusion to the series.